Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com.
Well. Today we're going to talk about fucking barbecue.
Yeah.
Because really, what else is there in life? We've got Brendan Lamb here today. Tell us who you are.
Brendan Lamb. I do Central Texas style barbecue.
That's
It's very short.
You're a barbecue consultant, which I think is probably the best job in the world to have.
Yeah, I get to go around spreading the barbecue gospel, letting people letting people in on the secrets.
Are you a barbecue fundamentalist?
Well, in some aspects, yeah, not all aspects. You know, I like to mix it up a little bit and try and bring it to the next level, elevate it a little bit. But
Yeah.
You got to keep it the basics.
Well, you're so you've done some stuff on Food Network with Bobby Flay. You up until recently ran your own barbecue joint up in the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area, but you've shut that down for now to focus on some of the other stuff, right?
Yeah. It all kind of lined up perfectly. Maybe didn't see that in the very beginning, but you know, we ran Smiley's Barbecue for a good long time. Moved around some, and it ended up, you know, being better for us with the meat prices right now, with some landlord drama, all that good stuff. We're deciding to shut it down and do a little bit more consulting, doing some traveling around and showing people what we can do in Texas, so we can bring it out everywhere else.
So you say you focus on Texas barbecue. That's your specialty?
Yeah, brisket, man.
Brisket, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what that means exactly. What's the difference? Tell me what this is for the audience more so than me, because I'm into this shit too. But I just like this to exist so people can watch it and learn some stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me about what the different types of barbecue, not just Texas, and then tell me about what Texas barbecue is specifically.
Okay, so I mean, it goes you can't really throw.
I'm from the Carolinas, by the way,
All right,
so that's what I grew up with.
Okay, so you're a hog guy with some, you know, the white sauce and
Pulled pork,
Yeah.
hash, stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, and that's its own thing in its own right. You know, those guys have been doing it out there like that. You know, like Rodney Scott and Sam Jones.
Yeah.
And they've been killing it for years and
my,
years. And
my
years.
uncle had a place. He had a chicken and pig farm in northern Georgia, near Elberton, just north of Atlanta, and ran a smokehouse on the weekends. Not really a barbecue business necessarily, just like I've got all this shit, and this is Georgia, so we're doing it.
Yeah.
And they were only open on Friday, Saturday.
It kind of goes that way with
Yeah.
a lot of these guys now too. I mean, most of these, including myself, we're not open on the first part of the week.
Right.
Or weren't. It's more of like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday deal. Mm-hmm. And just the reasoning for that is because most of the time it's a lunch deal, and a lot of people can't get out of their office for lunch.
Correct,
this past year, they've been not even in their offices at all.
And it's not like barbecue isn't something. Good barbecue isn't something that you'd necessarily mass produce. Right?
No, it's a small batch.
Yeah, there's some companies that have gotten pretty good at, like Terry Black's makes a fuckload of barbecue, and all of it is good.
Took the words out of my mouth.
But it's like you have to figure out your velocity, right? How quickly people are buying the meat. They've got it down.
Yeah.
They're like the Chick-fil-A of fucking barbecue, to be honest.
Yeah.
But most people just can't do that, right?
No.
So let's get back. We're getting off track here because I'm getting hard for barbecue. So there's Carolina barbecue. What's that?
Exactly what you said. Most of it is the whole hog.
A lot of pork.
Yeah, a lot of pork.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can move. That's kind of the traditional way that barbecue goes. Is you know, got sausage and pork and all that, and then you've got Texas, which has decided that, you know, there's enough places that do amazing pork. Let's figure out this other really tough piece of meat, which is brisket.
Right.
You know, you've got two pieces of meat that are kind of glued together, that are cooking at different speeds and have different fat contents, and you've got to make them finish at the same time. So it's more of an art. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a huge art, you know, form to cooking a whole hog, and with all those different pieces of meat, you get them out and go at the same time.
I mean, breaking down connective tissue and then getting the meat to the right temperature without overcooking and retaining the fat and getting the flavor that you need out of it. It's all. There's an art and science to all this stuff.
Yeah, and it's a matter of just, you know, it's a numbers game. I mean, I worked at a few of these big places, and, you know, we're putting out hundreds of briskets a week, and that's kind of how I got my start on it.
But it is a numbers game. But we talked about this before the show. The numbers that are important is temperature.
Temperature, not time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's a big thing that people don't understand about, particularly about smoke. I think smoking, especially because it's not necessarily indirect heat, but it's not like a convection oven either. You know what I mean?
And you can over smoke stuff too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you get that real, what's the worst thing about barbecue, going to a bad barbecue place, is you go there and you have the meat and you're like, oh, that's great. And then
It's like stringy and...
It's stringy and dry, and then you eat sauce for it, and then you're going home and you're burping it up for the next 3 or 4 hours. That's not the fun part.
You don't want to eat burnt fat that's trapped inside of meat. It's just gross.
You got to render it down, and you got to turn it into that nice, buttery, salty...
And I got to say, I mean, a lot of people know how to cook brisket. Terry Black's around here is my favorite.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of good barbecue here in Texas, but the ability to I love this show because already in the comments, people are talking about how they want fucking ribs now. It's barbecue is something that is more American than a hamburger to me.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Like anybody can make a hamburger, I guess. Anybody can barbecue, but there's a lot that goes into it's almost like the pioneer spirit where you're using the whole animal, right? Or taking something, like you said, a tough piece of meat to cook that has different variables and figuring out how to do it well and stuff like that. I think there's something really American about that.
Yeah, and then going on with that pioneer thing is taking the parts of the brisket that you might not use that are a little bit tougher to cook or that might be, charring up on you, and you can take it off and you can grind it up and make it into burgers. You can turn it into a sausage, which I really love making sausage as well.
Out of brisket, huh?
Yeah, brisket and the pork rib trimming. It's good. Do you make your own sausage?
I have years ago, but not really recently, to be honest. I mean, it's been a while since I've gotten into that, but it's probably a good time to start doing it again. I mean,
I'll show you.
The more, like you said, meat prices are going up, so the more you can buy. When I lived in California, I was in a meat co-ops all over the place. So basically, a meat co-op is, I don't know, it's like the website algorithm matches you up with other people that also want a side of beef, and it splits the side of beef up amongst you evenly.
Oh, so you're buying the cow and then...
you buy a cow and they split it up accordingly based on who wants what.
Yeah.
Like, I want the brisket and this, and this, and the other person wants some of this stuff, so it kind of matches it all up. That's a good thing to do, but,
really
you're going to end up with a lot of meat that you don't necessarily... Not that you don't want, but meat that you didn't have a purpose for originally.
Yeah, it's not traditional, and the way to cook it, or, you have to come up with your new ways, and that's a good way to, utilize that is to make sausage or burgers.
Well, so what about... my girlfriend is from Kansas City, and they like burn ends there.
They love burn ends. We don't burn our briskets in Texas.
Right, yeah, we cook them properly. But... I do like burn ends though. They're fucking good. So it's interesting. Whenever she goes to Terry Black, she always asks for burn ends, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Like we can cut the end of the brisket off for you right here. There's a lot of fat in there."
Money bite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, it's like, it's like not having your cake and eating it too. It's just like, hey, can you give me? It's like eating the icing off the cake, basically, eating the burn ends.
And then you're leaving it with the. You cook the brisket for those good pieces, right?
That's
Cartman eating the
the chicken, the KFC skin. Yeah. Because if you cut off the ends and you're just left with that brisket in the middle, that's why you have to slice it then and slather it in barbecue sauce like they do.
Yeah.
So there's a price to pay. Yeah, your burn ends are good, but your brisket sucks.
And it's pretty easy to make good burnt ends whenever it comes to. There's so much.
That's the best piece of meat that exists. Let's be real, dude. If the whole cow was just burn ends, fuck, we wouldn't even be sitting here talking. We'd be eating them right now.
What we started doing a lot in North Texas was, that kind of the play on the burnt end thing. We don't really burn our briskets, so we decided to start doing the pork belly burnt ends.
Right, those are good too.
Oh yeah.
That's just like crispy bacon almost, but a big chunk of that shit.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff. What about ribs? What's your favorite ribs?
I love cooking beef ribs, but on a daily basis.
It's a caveman kind of situation.
It's the butchers call it the 123A. It's like it's the plate rib. So it's like a 10 to 12 inch bone.
And how many pounds of? It's like 2.5 pounds of meat on some, or on each rib.
Each rib is at least 1.5 pounds.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one small end bone that doesn't get there, but I love cooking the pork ribs too. That was kind of one of the biggest challenges of me breaking off on my own from the places I was is learning the pork rib because I didn't cook that at the restaurant.
So you learned how to cook or how to barbecue here in Texas.
Yeah.
But then you had to kind of go outside of your comfort zone a little bit and learn some of these other meats or what?
Yeah, we grew up doing all the stuff that I see as wrong now. Well, it's not even wrong. It's just your own kind of style.
Right.
But growing up, injecting briskets and cutting them in half and scraping the bark off, doing all that.
Cutting them in half and scraping the bark off.
Yeah. That's just. if you go to some of these places that are not, I mean, you're kind of spoiled here in Austin.
Like
where
Bill
everybody-
Miller's, you mean?
I mean,
That's all frozen.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
Sure.
yeah, they'll separate the point from the flat, and then and then just scrape the burnt stuff off is what they call it. But that's actually where all the flavors at.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. So and then they just give you the brisket. They're looking for the smoke ring. That's traditionally how people viewed brisket until this whole Central Texas thing took off with like the Louis Mueller style.
Yeah, well, luckily we've got what we have today, right?
Oh, yeah,
Because,
yeah.
goddamn, I mean,
That's what
there's
I
so
got.
many good places here in Texas. One of the new ones that I haven't been to yet is Interstellar, but you've been there.
Yeah,
You know
I
the-
mean, I haven't got to go inside of his restaurant yet. But we do a lot of these festivals and stuff together.
Right.
But John Bates is that guy is next level. I mean, there's not one bad thing I can say about him or his food.
No, I've heard they got ranked, the barbecue rankings came out, and they're number 2 in the state
Yeah,
of Texas, so
yeah.
that's not bad.
Yeah.
What other barbecue out there? Is there, I mean, on the West Coast, it's like tri-tip and shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the biggest, at least in Northern California, it's mostly tri-tip.
And I just got kind of into cooking some tri-tip.
Well, I'm starting to see it at the local butchers now a lot.
Yeah, I want to know why that's not here. Like growing up in California, that was like a super traditional thing. In
That
the
was like
household.
once a week you eat
Yeah.
a tri-tip.
Well, it's
for
kind
sure,
of
yeah.
you don't see all the brisket over in California either, so that's
Right.
kind of the same. It's just a geographical thing.
Yeah, well,
We got all the cattle here.
so
And the history of brisket too is kind of crazy.
that's
but-
true.
yeah.
I mean, there's like Neiman Ranch out there in California, but they can't produce cattle like, I mean, obviously like Texas, or we've got other buddies that produce livestock meat, Mountain Primal, and they handle. I don't know. Do you know Bison Union? Do you know who Bert Kuntz is?
Yeah, not personally, but
What's that?
I said not personally.
Oh, no, but you know who he
I
is, yeah. So Bert is, like, he's got a bunch of bison, and he provides them with their bison meat and shit like that. So they've gotten into that recently a lot more.
Bison brisket would be fun.
I was just asking that piece of shit the other day. Like, hey, I was asking him if he's ever had a bison brisket. He's like, yeah, I've had them. They're really good. I'm like,
There's a little bitty.
so can you, like, where can I buy one? Because I haven't found, I buy from a range of different places. Crowd Cow, I buy from Mountain Primal. Anywhere I can get meat, I buy it.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen bison brisket anywhere that I can just buy online. So what the fuck? Do I just got to go murder one of these things myself or what?
You can go get some bison jerky at Buc-ee's. But
Yeah, that's true. But that's dubious. I don't know if that's actually bison or not.
There's,
you know what
there's
I mean?
not a chance.
So what are you up to these days? You say you've closed your shop down for a little while for a number of reasons. What is it exactly that you're going to get into now? I mean, just for the audience's sake, we're definitely going to do a cooking show.
Yeah. I can't
On
wait.
Drinkin Bros Network that involves all of our bullshit plus meat.
Yep.
And will involve some of the companies you know and love. But just in general, what is it? I know that you have a barbecue consultancy. So is that you go to restaurants and like teach people?
Yeah.
Here's some
Yep.
ways you can improve and be more efficient, or what do you focus on? The efficiency part, the flavor, the whatever it is, or all of it? What is it?
Well, it's mostly me trying to get them over being scared of cooking a brisket. Everybody that's not from Texas is scared of cooking brisket for the most part. Not everybody, but whenever it comes down to it, if you're going to start putting that out at your restaurant on a weekly basis, that's a big cost to incur, not knowing what you're doing.
It's a big cost, and you certainly
So easy to fuck up.
you don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to cook 200 and only need 50. You know
And
what I mean?
that's really the biggest
Yeah.
fight, that we've had, and trying to find ways to reuse your brisket, that you, without reheating it and slicing it, you can't do that. It loses so much of its integrity. But
Right.
back to what we're trying to do is get this whole barbecue consultants thing off the ground and do it more nationwide. I've done it all over Texas. I've done a bunch in Oregon. I've done a little bit over in Michigan. But I'd like to spread it out.
People are
a little bit further.
barbecuing up in Michigan, huh?
Yeah. They nearly. I don't know if they opened it because of pandemic stuff, but there was a restaurant group that I trained up that was going to open up in Ferndale, which is just right south of Detroit, I guess.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I think if more people are kind of involved in, or not involved in, but rather getting trained up on how to do everything the correct way, obviously efficiency across the board is going to get better, which means there's going to be a lot less wasted meat,
Yeah.
right? Which is a big thing because you don't. I mean, the people that most folks gravitate towards in the hunting community, like I don't know, Steve Ranella, for
Yeah,
example. would consider himself a conservationist before a hunter for sure, right? Like that's a big deal to him, and it should be to all of us. We hunted the American buffalo basically to extinction.
Oh man,
You know what I mean, we don't want to do shit like that again, and we don't have to. By the way, there's like so many options these days, and so many ways to both get the meat and use it efficiently and responsibly. So, are there any? Do you have like NDAs with these companies, or do you? Like, can you talk about some of the ones you've worked with and their successes and stuff?
Not by name, but I mean, I don't want to do all that. I do have NDAs when it comes to that kind of stuff. But whenever it comes to, I'm not a big secret keeper. You know, there are a lot of, whenever it comes to the barbecue and what you're doing with it, a lot of guys are like, no, this is my special thing. I like to spread that knowledge, you know, because if people taught me something, I have to teach, you know, I want everybody else to learn too.
Yeah, it's not like fucking. Everybody knows how to make ice cream, right?
Yeah.
And people are still buying it.
But not everybody makes it because they do it on South Congress over there.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. So have you worked with any of the companies here in Austin that we know? I mean, Austin's. You've got a lot of people here doing that stuff. I mean, obviously Terry Blacks has been here for 7,000 years or whatever the fuck. But there's a bunch of other places around here as well. Valentina's is great.
One of my favorites.
Their queso is the best queso that exists on earth, in my opinion. Like you take the basically burnt ends from brisket and put it in the bottom of really good queso with the best. I don't know how they make those chips.
You put up with their absolute shit service because the food's so goddamn good.
Yeah, it's like you got to meet a guy in a parking lot at 3:30 in the morning to get it sometimes. But
they tell you the food's ready at 11. The food's not ready till 2:30.
Well, look, what do you got to do? Just stand there and wait.
Right.
They're in a fucking food truck in a parking lot. The hell do you expect? Yeah, but I love those. I love their food.
There's been a few in here in town that I've worked with, and I'm definitely not going to mention names or anything, but
well, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here too. You talked about some of the new strategies and how some people are either afraid or into the old school stuff. Franklin and at Loro with it's Korean barbecue, but not what you think, right? Yeah. It's not like you're not grilling your own shit, and like you would expect in a Korean barbecue place. It is Korean food mixed with barbecue.
Exactly,
like
the
barbecue.
infusion part.
It's very interesting. Their food is so good there.
Yeah, there's a few different places that are doing. They're kind of taking the traditional, meat market style service, which is the Franklin style, and taking those pieces of meat and elevating it to a new level and incorporate it in different kinds of foods. So like you're talking about with Loro, they've got like CM Smokehouse. Kate Martin, he's doing all sorts of really cool stuff with his meats, as well as Leroy and Lewis. Evan Leroy, they really kill it over there too by taking it to the next level. Their burnt ends are killer.
I haven't had that.
Leroy and Lewis?
No.
Yeah. I haven't talked to him in a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what they got going on, but I know that they were killing it for the longest time.
Well, we've gone through all the normal stuff here.
Yeah.
Tell me about Food Network. What was that like? You work with Bobby Flay. He seems like a good guy.
He really is.
I mean, maybe a bit of a taskmaster, but when you run your own business for that long, you kind of become that way, right? He
practically got Food Network off the ground.
Yeah.
There's him and a little small handful of guys did, but whenever I got booked for the show, I got excited, getting to even be on the same set as Bobby Flay, and let alone if y'all have seen the show, no spoilers or anything, but I was on his team.
Right.
And the whole first time, you see all these chefs on TV and everybody's running around them, yes, chef, yes, chef, yes, chef. And we started off doing that, and then he ends up being like, guys, calm down. Like, I'm on your team. Call me Bobby. Call me Bobby. And so he taught me a bunch of cool stuff, and, he's just real level-headed, but he's also running a production pretty much while he's there on set being talent as well. So,
which is, by the way, pretty impressive.
It really is.
Like if you've done production before, you know that being in front of and behind the camera at the same time is not optimal.
Yeah, not at all.
Like it's kind of sucks.
And he's got an earpiece in the whole time too, where he's got his business partners, which are running the production, in his ear. So it's pretty fun stuff. He handled it very well.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's crazy that he's not with Food Network anymore. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I would much rather see Bobby Flay start his own network than Donald Trump start his own network. I think I've got a lot more to learn from Bobby Flay than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I'm tired of all the politics and bullshit, but I do enjoy meat. Well, Bobby Flay's he's a Southwest specialist, right? That's kind of his area of specialty.
Yep.
But you got to be pretty to have that
Iron
many
chef.
restaurants. Yeah, he's an Irish chef.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that something that I wonder about the restaurant community? So in America or in Europe, it's Michelin stars, right?
Yeah.
Here it's more like James Beard, but it doesn't. They're not the same thing.
No,
You know
not
what
at all.
Like a James Beard is a yearly award, kind of, and the Michelin star is more of like it's more of a ranking system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll
It's
come
different.
in at any time
Yeah,
with
yeah.
their Michelin star, and it's kind of nose uppy with the Michelin star thing.
It's mostly prefix menu stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? I mean,
They come by and they see a fork on the ground that you missed. You might lose a star because of that. So it's
do people actually give a shit about that? I mean, that's
Yeah,
I guess that is kind of a European mindset. But I wonder, even with the, so you see in the Iron Chef stuff, there's a pretty diverse group of cuisines, right? People that specialize in different stuff. Michael Symon's got his own style. Bobby Flay's got his own style. Is it Hero? What the fuck is his name? The guy that starts with an N, the Asian dude. Fuck's his name? God damn it, I can't ever remember his name. Anyways, they're pretty well represented, but what you don't see is like traditional American style cooking necessarily. Like there's new American, but you don't see. Why isn't there a barbecue expert that's a fucking Iron Chef? You know what I mean?
I know. I mean, you just got barbecue guys that are starting to get named and not
Right.
getting Michelin stars, but getting named in the Michelin
Yeah.
book, and they've also got the James Beards that are starting to get passed out to the barbecue guys. But I think it's just been seen such as like a not a fine dining kind of situation for the longest time that hopefully it's starting to get caught up to that. I mean, I care less if I ever got a Michelin star.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that part doesn't. Morimoto, yeah, that's his name.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I care necessarily about the Michelin star stuff. I just think it's kind of bizarre that in the international market, there hasn't been, no pun intended, but there hasn't been much of an appetite for that style of cooking in the award process or the write-up process. And I wonder if these motherfuckers have had brisket from South Texas
No, they
or Central
haven't.
Texas.
And that's the thing, they haven't.
You know what I mean?
There's a lot of what do they call them? Culture vultures.
Yeah. I want to watch. I would pay a subscription fee to just watch Gordon Ramsay eat at Terry Black's and react to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd pay $50 like a pay per view
think-
to watch that.
I think he went to Franklin's.
He's been to
I
Franklin's.
don't know if he. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it was on video though.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
But it would. I mean,
And that was during the time that Franklin's was number one
yeah, for
over
sure,
and
yeah.
over and over. And
Yeah.
I mean, when it gets to a certain level, all the you can't say that one's better than the other. For the most part, it's kind of your taste buds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's a point that you can't make it any better. It just is what it is, and you like it or you don't. Yeah,
Fat's
for sure.
rendered perfectly.
Yeah.
It's trimmed perfectly. It's
Yeah. So you guys, the Food Network thing you did, was it here in Austin? Is that what-
Bee Cave.
Bee Cave,
Yeah, right
okay.
outside of Austin. There's the Star Hill Ranch.
And what was the setup for that? I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to watching it, so don't spoil too much. But what was Master Chef is individuals competing, that they're on teams, and then there's Hell's Kitchen where you're competing on teams where you get eliminated based on your team behavior and individual performance. What was this one like?
It's kind of the team thing. There's 3 different teams. It was season 2 anyway. It was my season. So you got Michael Symon, Bobby Flay.
Oh, Simon is on this one.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
cool,
Eddie Jackson too.
Oh, cool, shit.
So there's 12 contestants. They all pick 4 people, and then there is a challenge to start with, and that kind of gives us. It's called the Advantage Challenge, and that gets it to where you're getting set up for the day, and then after.
And you're not the advantage thing is where you're not competing. Like the team that wins the advantage doesn't have to compete against the other two.
They have an advantage in the next one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So say if you're doing desserts, you get a bunch of dessert equipment that the other person doesn't, or the other teams don't get, and then. After that, later on, in the episode, it does the team challenge, and whatever team loses has to eliminate a player.
Oh boy! So
yeah.
it's like a vote at the end to eliminate a player if you lose the challenge or whatever.
Well, there's 3 judges, and to mine it was Rodney Scott, Brooke Williamson, and Carson Kressley, and it was fun. But
Rodney Scott knows a little bit about barbecue, right?
yeah, Rodney Scott for sure knows a lot about barbecue.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I got to. Did the Charleston Wine and Food Festival, I think, in 2015 or something.
I've been
like
there
that.
for that one.
Yeah, and I got to cook right next to Rodney Scott. He had my brisket and loved it.
That's a good compliment.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's a Carolina guy though, right? So he's more of a hog guy, but still,
I literally
he knows pretty much everything. I guess.
I went over there. I mean, he cooks it all. He really does at his restaurant. He does every single thing, and it's more of the traditional style, but he's taken it to a whole new level with keeping that same tradition that he grew up with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is. And what's the winner gets like what a fucking
They get their own TV show. I mean,
Oh,
not
shit.
well, the web show, I guess.
Webisodes,
Yeah,
okay,
webisodes.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's on Discovery Plus, I think. And then they get, I think, like some grills or something like that.
God damn. I can't stop thinking about food now. So this is going to be, I think I'm just getting hangry at this point.
Well, I feel bad for not bringing any barbecue.
No, it's
now.
fine. We got Terry Blacks on the way. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I guess with the popularity of Traeger, Green Egg, etc., smoking at your home is now not just easier than ever before, but it's getting wildly popular. I mean,
it's so mainstream.
Yeah, for not a whole lot of money, you can get a pretty decent setup at your house.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Traeger did really good by starting to take a bunch of these people that are in like the kind of pop culture as well as like Meat Church, Matt Pittman.
Yeah.
And they get them and give them a grill and give them a smoker and say, hey, let's go ahead and start doing your videos with these things.
Yeah, why not?
And it's worked amazingly. So that they've got these huge audiences that say that, look, I saw a Traeger yesterday at Home Depot. I'll go grab.
Dude,
one
I
of
was
those. I'll do
walking
the
through
same thing.
Costco the other day, and I just happened to stop. It wasn't even a new model of Traegers. It was one I didn't recognize, so I went over to look at the label and see what it was because we were just walking through. I've got a fucking Traeger.
Yeah.
And I was standing there looking at it, and 3 different people walked up and like, hey, you should buy that thing, man. That thing's awesome. I'm like, just relax, dude. I got it under control here. Do I look like a guy that's not eating meat? But yeah, it's they've certainly popularized it, but there's still now. This is the exciting point in the food for me because this is the point where so many people have access to this stuff, so the amount of data you're getting back is higher. But again, it is kind of like an easy bake oven, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a set it and forget it type of situation. For a lot of stuff, for some stuff you can't, you have to pay more attention. But for the most part, like for a steak, for just a regular like ribeye steak, I would use your probes and stuff, but you're pretty close time-wise to a normal.
Yeah.
Like if you look up the recipe and it says a time and your meat is cut properly and you treat it properly, it's going to cook in about the time you want. Yeah. But if it's like a pork shoulder or something like that with fat deposits and bones inside of it or whatever else, and it's experienced different levels of temperature, you've got to use a probe and you've got to wait.
Yeah.
You let that thing cook as long as it needs to cook, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not it depends on, the temperature. It's not the time. Like you're saying a little bit ago, you can't just say, okay, this pork butt weighs 6 pounds. I'm going to cook it for 6 hours. You need to make sure and have the right temperature. And then, in traditional Texas, it's a lot lower temperature, maybe 200 degrees, 220 degrees. But, now most people cook around 250, 275.
Yep. There's also a lot of weird shit too. So like, I think with pork especially, there's some point, I can't remember what it's called, but there's some point where the temperature plateaus for a while.
Stall.
Yeah,
brisket does that real bad.
Why the fuck does that happen? Do you understand the physics behind that? Because it drives me nuts. Like I'm sitting there checking my phone. I'm like, it's been at fucking 180 for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not that long usually, but yeah, it's like a good 30 or 45 minute stretch where it will not increase by 1 degree even.
Yeah, it was in that point, you just got to take bump your temperature up a little bit, and it'll push it through the stall, so you're not going to stay in the stall forever.
So that's what. So yeah, let's talk through that process. So let's say I'm trying to get to an internal temperature of I don't know, like
what are you cooking?
150 pork, right? So it's like 145, 150, right?
160.
160.
Yeah, I mean,
but doesn't the temperature increase during the rest time at some point?
It depends on how hot you're cooking. I mean, it will for a little bit, but you get momentum with the meat coming off the pit. So say you're cooking at 250 degrees or 275 degrees and you pull it off, it's still going to continue up in temp for maybe 10, 15 minutes before it levels out and starts dropping.
Okay.
So, say with brisket anyway, a lot of people cooked around 200, 220, or 202 degrees internal temp.
Right, yeah.
But
202 is about perfect.
Yeah, you say maybe
allegedly.
Yeah.
Right.
It depends on the brisket and depends on the grade of the meat and all that stuff too. So if you pull it off at 198 internal temp and you're cooking at 300 degrees, it's probably going to get up to 202.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
Because
of the ambient temperature on the outside of the meat. But if you're cruising at like, one of the recipes. A lot of the recipes I'm seeing now, a lot of the newer recipes that are getting posted by experts are like, set your shit at 185 and cook it there for a while, and then when you see the stall, bump it up to 225 and let it cook some more.
Yeah.
So you can get all the way up to like 200 and then pull it, and it increases a degree and a half or 2 degrees, something like that. And there's a lot of art to it, but I think we make a mistake when we say there's a lot of art to it. Like every single time has to be a trial and error. There's going to be differences every single time, but they're definitely rules that work, right?
Every time, yeah.
So tell me the fucking rules, man. Damn.
Consistent temperature. That's
Right.
I mean, with your Traeger, that's pretty easy to do. But
Yeah,
whenever
yeah.
you're working with 1,000-gallon,
Shit.
you can fit 30 briskets on those offset smokers like that. You're babysitting that fire every 20
I mean, do you
minutes.
use a probe that has an ambient temperature reader as well?
I don't even use the probe, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, well, to finish cooking,
Yeah, for sure,
I'll poke it, make sure. But it's more like you're looking for the tenderness of how easy the probe pushes through it instead of actually looking for the temperature. But
That's probably really
just-
important with pork as well too, because it's white meat, it's stringy and shit. So if you're getting resistance, it's probably still raw, right?
pretty much. I mean, if not raw, then at least still not past the point of where the connective tissue is rendered out and all that, to where you can actually pull it apart without it being rubbery. But the cheat code is a consistent temperature. It really is. And then to notice where the meat is in the cook. When you get to the stall, you shouldn't have to keep it at that same exact point. You need to take your temperature up a little bit to push it through the stall.
Right.
Not enough to where it's going to char and burn up the outside.
Right, for sure.
Dry out the meat.
Yeah, that's a big problem with pork too. I mean, it can go badly quickly.
So fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just made like 12 pounds of bacon this weekend. Well, actually, I've got another 6 pounds in the refrigerator still curing right now. I always pull one off right around the time that I think the brine should be done, and smoke it and then see what it's like. And the smoky flavor is good. I want it a little bit more salty, so I'm going to leave it in for another day or two. Right? You still got to wash it, but anyways, I did hit that stall at some point and use that method for the first time on pork belly specifically to crank the temperature up, and it worked perfectly.
It does.
It was really like right when you see the stall, you have to be careful because you don't want to crank it up too much. But if you see like how long would you say wait? But and
when you start seeing the stall?
Yeah, so like let's say I need to get it up to whatever fucking temperature for bacon. I can't remember what it is.
165.
165. You get stuck at like 125 for like what, half an hour maybe?
Yeah, if that. I mean, and I cook hotter, so it does hotter than what you're saying you cook at. So I don't really hit the stall whenever it comes to the pork belly.
Really?
But
I think hold on, let me see. I used this temperature. I think I cooked it at 180.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you're making bacon, and you're still going to hit that bacon and put it on your your
Right.
skillet
Yeah,
or whatever when it's done. But if I'm just doing pork belly, burnt ends or something like that, I'm going to cook it straight through.
What do you cook it at, like 225 or something like that, or even higher?
At 250, 275.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And they'll be done in 6 hours or so.
Shit.
And and that's a 10-pound slab of pork belly. Skinless. I like using skinless.
Yeah, well, I don't like the skin is weird.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it just
making
I don't know.
cracklings. That's fine.
Yeah, that's gross though.
You're not a crackling guy.
I mean, we called it fatback.
Yeah.
Back in the day, but yeah, they're all right. But it's a little. You can have a couple here and there.
They're rich.
It's a bit much on the gut after a while. I do like some of these other tips and tricks, like putting when I make bacon, I throw it in the freezer for like half an hour and then put it in the refrigerator because it like just grabs it really quickly, makes it a lot easier to slice later.
Yeah.
Are there any little tips like that let's keep it to brisket today.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, let's just start this whole line of questioning over and we'll just go through it with brisket.
Okay.
Let's start from the very beginning, selecting a brisket.
You got to make sure you have the actual fat cap on it that covers the whole top of the brisket.
Yeah, I remember someone in Wisconsin one time asking me if I wanted that removed.
No.
And I'm like, do you want to fist fight me in the parking lot? What kind of stupid question is that, dude?
Yeah.
Certainly the fat cap is important, right?
Yeah, you got to have something that has a good fat cap on it with good color into it. The fat, it can't be a brisket that has really been frozen before.
Right.
It kind of messes with the internal, or the connective tissue whenever you freeze it and then unfreeze it.
Was there a way to defeat that if it has been frozen?
Not that I've come across.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I really try to avoid the frozen briskets.
Right.
But the next thing you're doing is you're going to flip it over on the backside and look at the marbling. You want to make sure there's plenty of marbling inside in your flat. There's going to be plenty in your point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
you want it to be consistent, right? You
Yeah.
don't want like big chunk, like some ribeyes. The difference between like an A5 Wagyu ribeye and even a prime ribeye is that
dispersed.
it's like there's prime ribeye is going to have these big chunks of fat, and then A5 you're like, this doesn't even look like a ribeye. Like, well,
Yeah.
it is. I promise you it is.
Yeah, it looks like they're dipped
that's
in
why it
butter.
costs $150 fucking dollars. Yeah. But yeah, so selection of the meat. You're looking at color as well. You said.
Yeah. Like I like the stuff that's a little bit more deeper, like the darker red on the meat instead of like the
What does
pink.
that mean? Like from a
Just the grade, really.
Yeah. Is that like, what does that reflect though? Like the hemoglobin count is higher or some shit? And there's
I
more
mean,
blood in it?
Yeah,
I mean, what is it?
more blood got left in it, which the carcass gets drained, so it's not really even blood. It's
Right. Yeah.
But it's a better tasting
Okay.
meat for me. The ones that have kind of gotten more pink to them, they seem like they've just aged a little bit longer out and didn't get taken care of as much.
Yeah, that looks weird.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with pink meat, but the deeper red for me is the one that
More
really,
flavor, probably. Yeah. I mean, there's probably more tannins in there that's going to hold on to the smoke when you smoke it, anyways.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if it looks that way.
yeah. Whenever you're trying to do the smoke thing, I mean, it's a whole other story of wood selection.
Right. Yeah.
If you're using pellets, that's fine. They're always going to be the right the moisture, I guess, content inside the.
But you don't want to
pellets.
go chop down a tree and think
you
you're going to
can't.
get a good
You can't.
quality product.
Yeah,
right?
it's gonna smoke way too much. You're gonna get
Right.
that what we like to call is the dirty smoke, which is just
Yeah,
the white
black
smoke,
smoke.
black
Yeah,
and white
yeah,
smoke
yeah,
just
yeah.
rolling.
Yeah, it's
You really want something that's nearly like translucent, kind of like a silver smoke.
That's a big mistake a lot of people make when they first get one of these pellet smokers. Is like, I don't see. They just expect to see like these wafting smoke all the time.
And that's great. The first 2 hours of the cook, that's fine. That's awesome.
But it's not always going to look like that,
No.
right? Especially if you're cooking at higher temperatures, you may not see any smoke at all. But it's still happening.
Yeah, that's why, like mine, with cooking brisket, I do a temperature ramp. I'll start a little bit lower, maybe around like 225 or something like that. And by the time my cook is done, I'm close to 300 degrees. Just throughout the cook as you're going, you slowly take it up. Just depends on where the meat's at in the cook.
Right. So we've talked about the selection of the meat. You want it to look a certain way, have the cap, the marbling.
Bend.
Anything else? The bend. Explain that.
Yeah, you don't want something that's absolutely like stiff and sturdy. That means it doesn't have very much connective tissue in it.
Right.
So pretty much if you pick up a select brisket and you're gonna go pick up a wagyu, then that wagyu is nearly gonna touch tip to tip when you hold it in your hand. Before you even cook it. Or
Yeah. Do people know the difference between the meats? There's like select is the bottom, right?
Yeah. I think
And then there's something, and then prime. What's the one in the middle?
Choice,
and then prime.
Yeah, and then now that they've got the all natural stuff, it's really hard to grade some of it. You got an upper 2/3 choice, which is close to prime, and even if you might get a few prime in there, like a lower grade prime, so there's kind of like an in between.
Is this like? Are these objective measures? Choice, prime, and select, or is it like?
No, it's
just like,
a standard.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a standard, but whenever it gets into the all natural meats, then it kind of gets a little bit more of a gray area, more objective.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've selected our meat, and let's just say we're making the standard brisket that you're going to get at a Terry Black's or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
You're going to get sliced brisket. It's going to have a ton of fat in it, and you're getting the whole cut. Like you're getting the cap and you're getting the whole thing, the point and the flat. How do you start out with that?
So you got.
I mean, there's a million different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say you had your choice. What would you do?
Well, after you got your meat, you got it selected. The trimming is the next part. I always start on the bottom side and get a bunch of that silver skin off. And take out the big decal fat, the big piece of hard fat.
Yeah.
I don't take it all the way out, just a lot of it, because I use it for my sausage. It doesn't render down as easy, so it stays inside there.
Okay.
But then after you get that, then you got to take you shape your brisket up. So any pieces of brisket that are a little bit too thin, that cooking at 275, 250, 275, that's going to char.
I mean, it's
up.
just going to be useless at the end, anyways.
and
And then
then-
you don't want to foul your meat with
Yeah.
char shit working its way into, because that does happen, right? Like if you burn part of the meat, it can
transfers.
it won't foul the entire piece of meat, but it'll get in there. It's just like any kind of
a good little like inch or so
yeah.
past that.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell you messed it up. So that's why I like to take it and I will chop it off and use it for my sausage or whatever.
You chop it up before you even put it in.
Yeah,
on the point there. If
Yeah.
it's too thin on the point, you just.
Because after you start cooking a bunch of briskets, you'll realize if you keep that part on there, farther along in the cook, it'll create a bowl.
And it gets nasty too.
Yeah, you'll get all your
Yeah.
juices start pulling up, I guess, right there, and then you lose the bark you've been setting all this time trying to create.
I've had that happen on a pork shoulder too, where it was too
Yeah.
thin on the end, and I didn't cut enough of it. I thought I got enough, but at the end, it still kind of turned up on me a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah.
motherfucker, because
And
I know that part's gonna suck.
And the only way you can fix that now is hitting it with a spritz or
Yeah.
or covering up with foil, or there's all these little tricks that
Yeah.
they help out. But
Okay, so
We-
but you cut that if it's too much on the point side, or I'm sorry, if it's too thin on the point side, you cut some of it off
not normally the points, normally the flat.
on the flat side.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. And what do you just save that for sausage?
Yeah, I'll
or
take all the
whatever?
fat off the fat cap
Yeah.
and try and get as lean as I possibly can and throw it in the grinder.
Okay. And what do you do with the rest of the meat? I mean, like if there's any meat that you have to cut off the end of there, do you use that for anything?
Yeah, I'll take it and use it for the sausage.
Oh, you just
Yeah.
use it for the sausage? Okay, I see.
Sausage or burger or, whatever the flavor of the week. Throw it some chili, just anything you really can. The beans, it goes good with the beans.
You know what's really nice? There's a place in Minneapolis that does this. They make brisket and stuff like that. They make pit beef as well, but they
cool.
take the end of their flats off like that, and then they combine that and the fat and spare rib into a burger. So the burger has spare rib on the inside of it, and the outside is what you're using for sausage, almost less fat, obviously.
Yeah.
But enough to bind it up and stuff.
That sounds
And
good.
then inside the burger, it's spare rib and Gruyere.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
I mean, it's fucking
Wow.
stupid. Yeah. Like, they used to have it at the Minnesota State Fair back in the day.
Well, that's what I'm talking about the elevate and the barbecue kind of thing is,
Yeah.
taking the stuff that's traditional and moving it on to something else. And it's some of these places that don't have a traditional barbecue scene like maybe Minneapolis doesn't. I mean, it might. I don't know.
It might be. No, not really. Not really. But there's no expectation up there.
Yeah.
People just want good food, so you're not offending. Like, if you start doing some weird shit with barbecue in Texas, you might run into some people.
Yeah,
that are like,
and I have.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and it sucks because you're like, no, let me just show you. They don't care.
So you've got your meat cut, you got it trimmed.
Yep.
Now what?
Now it's time to season, and I like to. We slather it in Texas. A lot of the Central Texas guys slather it with a little bit of mustard and vinegar mix before, and that's kind of just as a binder. There's all sorts of different wives' tales or why it happens, but it's more of a binder.
What do you mean by binder? What does that mean?
It helps your seasoning, your rub stick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and a little bit of flavor as well, but for the most part, that's going to.
That's one of the most important parts when you're cooking, especially smoking any kind of meat. If it's not treated in some way, like for bacon, I think if you don't remove the skin off of it, the smoke won't stick properly.
Yeah.
Or if you don't brine it properly, the smoke won't stick.
Yeah,
so you'll
the
get
membrane.
Yeah.
The membrane really is a barrier to it. I mean, not in everything. I cook the pork ribs.
So it's almost like aerating a lawn.
Yeah.
When you do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and some people score it for that reason. They'll hit you get a knife and throw some lines on it or something like that.
interesting. All right,
Yep.
so now you're seasoning, and you start off with that process most of the time.
That's like the daily situation. You get there, and then now you have all your briskets kind of on some trays or whatever. And
Just
then
like on paper, just getting
just ready to go.
And how long do you leave it like that?
Let them get closer to room temperature.
I see.
Yeah.
For like 2 or 3 hours.
Maybe
more?
an hour, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I start my smoker real low anyway. So
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, after you get that going, you start your smoke. You get a real heavy smoke on, and then you can kind of, for the first 3 or 4 hours, just have it on there. But I guess I completely skipped the seasoning part. So you slather it, get your rub. Traditional down here is half salt, half pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some paprika in there a lot
Yeah.
of the time, but not much of anything.
Granulated
other than,
garlic, seasoning,
granulated
salt.
garlic, yeah. Just the typical stuff. Right?
Yeah. But pretty much you can stick to a base of half salt, half pepper. You can change out some salts for different flavored salts and whatnot, but that's what you're going to be in. And then since it's such a big piece of meat, you can't. Everybody's really scared about putting too much seasoning on it. You literally got to cover the piece of meat.
Yeah.
To where
I
you
mean, I
can't
treat it
just-
like a prime rib.
Yeah,
Like, when
yeah.
I make a prime rib, I make a compound butter out of I
yeah.
mean, obviously unsalted grass-fed butter, but it's like salt, pepper, and herb de Provence, which is it's nice. It's got a lot of different stuff in
Yeah.
there, and it's literally like you can't see the meat anymore after I'm
Yeah,
done with that.
and that's what
bitch.
you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the meat will be fine.
That's your bark.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
bark you're
yeah,
creating.
yeah. You're just
And-
putting more fat out there with a little flavor that's gonna get itself into the meat right there. You need the fat as a carrier. It's like
Yeah.
the only way CBD gets into your body is with MCT oil,
Uh-huh.
right? With some kind of either MCT or what do you call it? Coconut oil or something like that. That's how. Anyways.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Not to get too technical about it, but it's important to understand that stuff because you cannot skip it. You have to do that part.
Absolutely. And a part that I did skip just now was the trimming on the fat cap.
Okay.
You can't leave that inch of fat on the top and
It's-
expect yeah.
You'll never cook that goddamn thing, right?
I mean, you
it's-
might, but it's going to be a real like a loogie kind of texture on the on the fat.
So how much do you actually leave? How much fat do you leave on top of that?
we try to
dish?
leave about a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is still a good amount of fat. I mean,
I'm actually do a little bit less. Mine's closer to like an eighth of an inch, but a quarter inch is a lot easier to get to without scalping.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to get into the meat because then then now you got problems. I mean,
easy
you can
to dry out.
Yeah, you can fix it with some of these tricks, but it's better to cut off. It's better to leave on a little bit more fat than take off too much. Probably,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. No, you're right. But if you're going to leave that fat on, you got to make sure and treat it the right way, and you got to render it out the right way. Because if you cut into a brisket and you see that fat on top is still all white,
there's no shortcut to that.
No,
there's no shortcut. I mean, you can't speed your way through that stuff. There's things that you do like the brining process and all that stuff and the trimming that help it out. But if you get to that point where you're like, I fucked this up, now you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what do you even fucking do at that point? Like, how do you recover that meat?
keep it going.
Like, just turn the heat down and let it go for the next 12 hours?
No, just dry out that way. So
Yeah.
I'd actually wrap it and take the heat up, I guess.
Yeah, wrapping it, I guess it can help.
Yeah.
All right, so you've seasoned it with the traditional seasoning. Now you're getting ready to put your shit on the smoker or the grill or whatever it is.
Yeah,
right?
get a good fire going, but it needs to be lower than what your cooking temperature is going to be throughout the whole time. You want to bring the temperature of the meat up slowly. So I always start, on mine, I've got the 16-foot long, offset smoker, so I can put it down at 225 degrees for a few hours. And then, get that smoke flavor on it, get the meat to start kind of breaking down a little bit.
But what if you're using like not a commercial device, but something that people are listening here?
Well, it's going to be the same thing. You just can't cook as hot because I've got more play in my space between my firebox and where the meat's sitting at.
Okay.
So if I'm saying 250, to like translate that in your head for like a backyard smoker, like 235, 240,
And that's where you started out.
Yeah.
If you're doing a brisket, and then
No, I start mine probably if you wanted to do your backyard thing, started at 200 and maybe 210, and then you can get it slowly up to 240, 250.
And how when you say slowly,
over 4 hours or so.
Yeah, what are the increments? What am I looking for to know that it's time to turn it up? Is it time, or is it like am I doing the trick where I'm pushing on to see how you know what I mean with the steak or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing to figure it out when?
So the first few hours, I literally just say about 4 hours on the briskets, and that kind of gives them enough of that heavy smoke to where I can, get it up to the temperature of the smoker without shocking the meat.
Right. And what does it do when you shock the meat? Like
It won't loosen up. If for some reason it's like jumping into a cold bath or something like that, you get real tense up and the meat never wants to let go. So even after you've rendered the fat and get close to the end of the cook, it's never going to get that soft.
This is physics, guys. If you put
Thermodynamics.
If you put boiling water into your freezer, it's going to freeze faster than room temperature water.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, and it's exactly what you just said. There's something elasticity. I can't remember the fucking phrase for it. I'll look it up later. But yeah, that's a real thing.
It's like metaphysics.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, look, that's why it's a fucking a science and an art at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
So you're bringing it up slowly so as not to shock it, which is another reminder to take your fucking time.
Yeah.
And that temperature matters more than the time.
It really does.
It's gonna take some time to do any of these things. That's what makes it taste good, right? Otherwise, it would be the Jetsons where you push a button and it shoots out a pill that tastes like whatever you want it to be.
One
Right?
day.
But yeah, hopefully, shit. If you could do that with barbecue right now, I would definitely be dead.
I saw a deal on Instagram. They've got a pressure smoker out now. So
A pressure smoker.
I've seen it. Look it up. It's
How does it work?
I haven't used it, and I haven't talked them into giving me one yet. So
I wouldn't pay for it, but if somebody gave me one, I would definitely try it out.
There's a few smokers that have been given to me that I was like, I'm not going to pay for that, but I'll check it out.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in the smoke now. You're in the heat part, and you're 4 hours in to your brisket.
Starting to get some color, a little bit of color.
And you're checking on not just the way it feels and not time and temperature, but even like the way it looks, right?
Yeah, and you get to a point to where if you put your hand and rub it over the top of the brisket, you'll be able to rub the bark off.
A little bit, yeah.
You don't want that. I'm not touching it at all until it gets
yeah.
to the point where the bark is married onto the meat
Right.
inside the fat cap. And that's about 4 or 5 hours in.
Okay.
But after that, we're off to the races. Make sure that your pit gets up to temp. About 250 is what I like to cook at on the big smoker. And we're running along there, and I'm just making sure, I'm saying that temperature is the most important thing. You cannot let that thing fluctuate all day just because,
when you say temperature, you mean the ambient temperature cooking the food.
Yeah, like the temperature is going to read on your pit.
Yeah. So you don't want it going up and down.
No.
Because I mean, you're not going to get consistency and everything.
Yeah, you're smoking the brisket that has the two different, consistencies of fat inside the
Yeah.
meat, and they're kind of married together, and you got it. So there's different ways to point the meat. There's different ways to all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But you're really looking for it to start getting some color. You want to start forming your bark, which is how you keep, you have good airflow over it, and
Right.
you got to make sure and have, the temperature hot enough to where you're not just going to like render the fat away and not create a bark.
Right. So that's what you're talking about when you're bringing it up slowly, but then at the end you're turning it up because you want to. I mean, we're searing the meat at this point, for lack of a better phrase, right? Not.
Yeah, you'll get to the
not like a
point.
frying pan,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
it's a next step in the process where you're trying to increase the temperature a little bit to make sure that the fat. It's almost like the reverse of flash freezing. Like you want to set it, I guess. Maybe it's like proving when you're baking or something like that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
you can kind of say it exactly like that.
Yeah.
So you're up to a point where you're forming your bark. You're trying to get that look of the brisket that you want, and then it gets to a stall point. Around that time, that it gets to be about as pretty as you want it to be.
Right.
It gets to the stall point, and then you're like, well, crap, 160, 172 degrees.
Like, I'm hungry and I need a couple more degrees here, dude. Let's
Exactly.
get this going.
So if I'm at 250, I bumped up to 270, 275.
And is there math involved there, or are you just like kind of bumping it up gradually because you know that's going to heat the meat a little more?
Yeah.
Or is there like some formula that people need to be aware of?
No, there's not a formula.
Okay.
You just kind of, you're giving the brisket a kick in the ass, being like, hey, stop being lazy. Yeah, start crawling, jump up into it a little bit.
Yeah, whipping it.
Yeah, and it ends up getting to the point where so you have your bark formed. There's three different stages. You've got that first 4 hours I was telling you, and then you've got the point where you're forming your bark and everything, and you're pushing it through the stall. And as soon as you're done with the stall, that's whenever you're going to start rendering out your fat. The fat is kind of slowly rendering through that whole process.
So you don't want to crank it up to like 400 fucking degrees because you're going to fuck
Mueller.
that process
That's
up.
John
right?
Mueller right
Yeah.
there. Yeah, he's a hot and fast guy. I don't.
Not a fan of that. I mean,
I can't do it.
It dries your fucking meat out really quick. You lose, like when you see people cut briskets in half and they squeeze it and all of that beautiful goodness drips out of it, that's what you're ruining.
Don't squeeze your meat. PSA.
Yeah,
guys.
don't do that.
Don't squeeze your meat.
I mean, for Instagram maybe, but then you've ruined the meat. What was the point in cooking it in the first place?
I do it at home if that's okay.
Yeah,
No,
I
Giorgio.
think that's fine.
No. We're talking about barbecue today, not your dick. We'll talk about that on the next show. Anyways, yeah, that's what you're fucking up at that point.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Shit,
No.
that's the best part. That's what makes Central, South, whatever Texas brisket the best.
It really is,
in my opinion.
Yeah.
So those stages, you're setting the bark, and now you're fucking rendering the fat out.
Yeah.
And now what am I looking for to know that thing's done? Aside from just the internal temperature, which is what do you want it at? 155 or some shit?
To finish the brisket? 200, 202.
Oh, 202.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking fucking pork belly again.
So you push it through your stall point, and it gets to about around 180 degrees internal temp, 185-ish. It'll start getting to where you can see the bark. I like to call it like starting to talk to you. It's kind of start bubbling up some in some areas. And then you start kind of feeling either with your temperature probe or with your finger.
And you want to check multiple spots on the meat with your probe, right?
Yeah, there's check the point, check the spot right in between the point and the flat, and then check your flat.
Okay.
And mostly on the side where that decal was.
Yeah.
That hard fat underneath. You want to check all the way down there because that's where the main spots are. Everything else is kind of starting to get hard and dried up from different areas. But you want to render the fat. The fat, you want it to be kind of a yellowish color. So if you have to, which you don't want to break your bark up, but if you move it around and you can see, bark breaks in the spot,
Right.
then you can see that it's kind of a different color on the inside. It starts to turn like kind of a yellowish color. That means you're rendering it out. It's not going to have that consistency when you bite into it that you want to spit out.
Yeah.
It dissolves in your mouth.
Yeah.
But then after you can tell that your bark's all set, you got your fat rendered and everything. That's whenever I wrap it up in that butcher paper, the waxless butcher paper. Still lets it breathe a little bit.
You wrap it up and just put it right back in the smoke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put it right back in the smoker.
And what's that do for the meat exactly? I mean, aside from just keeping everything in, obviously, but what else? What is it doing exactly?
It's really kind of it's speeding up the process. You've got your bark set. You've got everything on the outside that you want done with your brisket. You've got your fat rendered. That's really that whole part. But the inside of the brisket's still tough.
Right.
Maybe not crazy tough like it was an hour and a half ago, but if you wrap it up, it's keeping all that, and you're for lack of a better word, steaming it.
Yeah,
Kind of getting that pot roast thing going on.
I mean, you're almost sous videing it at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, could you do that? Could you just keep it in the paper, put it in the sous vide, and bring it up to temp that way? Would that fuck the meat up?
I mean, you probably could. I've never tried it, but it's the same thing as a lot of guys that don't want to waste wood in their backyard, and they get it to where they wrap it. You're not getting any more smoke on it.
That seems like it would work, doesn't it?
In the oven. Yeah, and it works. It works fine, but
does it do anything to the smoky kind of charred flavor that we all want?
No, because you're getting most of your smoke flavor the first few hours of the the first.
But like when you reheat something afterwards, it doesn't don't reheat French fries. It doesn't work.
No,
so do you lose the consistency more than the flavor of the bark, I guess, if you take it to a sous vide? I think you probably would.
You probably lose a little bit more of the
because the air would be gone out of it.
Well, it's just like when you talk about the microwaving a piece of brisket from the day before. Obviously,
don't do that.
Well, you're taking the all that connective tissue that you rendered down, and you're just dissolving it into nothing. So all of a sudden, you just have stringy pieces of meat.
Please don't do that. I mean, friends don't let friends do that.
No, I think there's a shirt there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now you've wrapped your meat and you've brought it up to that core temperature that you want whenever you pull it off. Do you take it to 202 and then pull it, or do you take it off a little bit slower?
I like pulling it at like 198, 200.
198?
Yeah, and about 200 is as high as I normally try and go. The pork butts that I pull are normally around 203-ish.
And that's based on when you based on how hot you've been cooking it too, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody's cooking at maybe a lower temperature than you're talking about, do they wait until 200 instead of 198?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not going to have as much momentum coming off the pit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it might reach that temperature, but it might be beyond the point that you want it to, right?
Yeah, you've lost too much moisture at that point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And now what? How long do you let the meat rest?
I like to let it rest to where I can bring it down. I mean, since I've worked with fire so much, like my hands, it's hard for me to feel the heat. If I'm just touching it with my fingertips. But if I put it on the inside of my wrist right here, with a little bit thinner skin, if it doesn't burn me, that's when I know it's ready to go inside the warmer or inside the cooler or whatever. Okay. But I let it rest for maybe like an hour outside of the pit to let it come down to 160 internal, 175.
Is there a converse? So like with steak, there's a general rule for different types of steak, but it's like let it rest for half the time you fried it or whatever. Is there anything like that for this type of meat, or is it you're looking for the temperature specifically?
It's a personal preference.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, it depends on
what's the difference between letting it rest for 30 minutes and letting it rest for an hour then?
You let it rest for 30 minutes, it didn't come down to temp enough. It's all that as soon as you cut into it, it's going to lose all the moisture.
Doesn't reconstitute inside?
No, it didn't have enough time for it to kind of congeal back up.
Makes a lot of sense. So it's like, it's another proving kind of situation, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. These are all good fucking tips.
Always rest your meat.
Yeah. If you sous vide a steak and then sear it on the outside,
that's different.
You can pretty much serve it immediately. But if you're not sous videing, if it's not a consistent temperature all throughout, like with sous vide, you should definitely rest it.
Yeah,
people fuck that up all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it looks so beautiful. You bring it right off the pit. You want to open it. You want to show your friends. You want to cut into it, and you see all the the juices coming out. That's perfect for an Instagram, like you're saying. But if you're trying to serve that to a bunch of folks that want to see how good your barbecue is.
Well, they might see how good, but they won't see how good. Like the important part of seeing is eating that shit.
The second, and everybody eats with their eyes, and it's so as soon as you cut into that brisket, you have a very limited amount of time. It dies so fast. It starts to the air gets to it too fast.
Is there a way to do that better? So a lot of people, again, have these tools available to them that weren't before that make things possible now, like cooking an entire brisket just midweek if they feel like it.
Yeah,
that's a reality now. You could especially if you one of the people stay at home or you work from home or something, you can do this any day you want.
Yeah.
So, but I'm cooking an 8-pound, 10-pound brisket, and there's 4 people in my family. We're not going to just eat all that at one sitting. I would love to be able to do that, but that's not happening.
Yeah.
So. Is there a way to cut it differently or whatever and then preserve it after the fact that people aren't aware of that would be useful to them in those situations?
A lot of people get carried away with cutting the brisket after they start cutting it because, you want to have all those beautiful slices laid out and all that. So if you're going to, I would always separate it. If you're going to, separate the lean from the moist, the point from the flat, and then I'd take off just what you need from each of those and just leave the whole piece.
Well, that's how you're supposed to eat a steak, right?
Yeah.
Like I see people who just like get a steak and then cut it up immediately into
Yeah.
all little pieces, and like you've completely ruined it.
Completely. Every bit of juice that was inside of it is now on your plate.
Yeah.
Even if you let it rest.
Yeah, God damn it, drives me crazy. So yeah, cutting off just the amount you need. And what about storing it after the fact? Is there a way that's better, and then reheating it afterwards? I know. I know you're trying to cook stuff for people to have right then and stuff like that, but these are real world problems. that people have.
Well, if most people's ovens go down to, I think the minimum is like 170 degrees or something like that.
Yeah.
But in a restaurant, we have the warming ovens or the holding ovens.
And they're like what, 130 or something?
145, 150. That's a good one for brisket, and you can hold that thing for 12 hours in there, and it won't ruin. But whenever you talk about being at home, I'd wrap it up in some cellophane and or vacuum seal it if you can. To keep
Vacuum sealing because bringing it back up to temp with sous vide is probably one of your better options.
It really is. I've done videos on that. We do it for Thanksgiving every year.
And by the way, guys, sous vide, it's not anything complicated. It's not. It's like a stick kind of thing with some adjustments on top. You put it into a Tupperware with a lid on it, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's literally that. And what it does is, if this is a piece of meat, instead of cooking this piece for 5 minutes and it gets to a certain temperature, and this piece for 3 minutes, it gets to a certain temperature, and you're hoping that the middle temperature gets to the right one based on that dispersion, it just takes this entire thing up to 130 degrees.
Yep.
That's it.
And then it'll stop right there.
All the way through, and it can't get any hotter than that because the water's only 130 degrees. And then you put it on a pan for like 30 seconds on each side and have the best steak you've ever had in your life.
Nice hot pan with some butter.
Yeah, God damn it,
Yes,
man.
sir.
It's so easy. So that seems like the most reasonable way to do it.
Well, even if you don't have the stick, the sous vide stick, you can really put it in a pot of boiling water. As long as it's vacuum sealed and airtight, and it's not going to open up, and it's heat proof.
Use like a candy thermometer or whatever the fuck you got around to make sure it's getting to the right. I mean, boiling water is what, 112 or some shit?
210.
Or 210.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Why did I do that math? It's like 210 to 212 is boiling water, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell where it's going to be.
Yeah, so I like we did a whole bunch of like half racks of ribs, and if we don't sell all the ribs, then we have rib specials, and I'll vacuum seal a half rack and then tell somebody how to reheat it, so it's as close to my product as you can possibly get, and I'll say throw it in a pot of boiling water for 10 minutes. Yeah,
I mean, if seriously, ribs especially, if you've cooked ribs and you pack them in something airtight like that with the sauce on them and you reheat them in sous vide, you're not going to be able to tell much difference.
No.
From
you really
the first time. I mean, that is, I've used that a number of times. That is very effective.
If you reglaze them, all that. Kind of,
like you just get a torch those motherfuckers up a little bit or something.
But if you take your ribs from the day before and that you cooked on the smoker, and then you try and wrap them in foil and throw them back on the smoker, thinking they're gonna get all black, and brisket looks good when it's all nice and got a good black color to it, but ribs don't really look all that great.
No. Well, I mean, I agree with that. So. We've taken you through the entire process of selecting, trimming, cooking, eating, I guess. No, we didn't really talk about the eating part that much. But definitely rewarming after the fact when you've made too much. If you've got any other questions about brisket specifically, where can people find you to ask their questions?
Most of it's on Instagram, Brendan_Lamb. Or you can go to Smiley's BBQ. Yep, either way, and we answer all the time.
And do you have any publications? You got any books out that people could buy or anything like that, or is it all mostly digital or what?
Working on a cookbook right now.
Cool.
Yeah, on a smoking book. But really, if y'all want to come see my food or have my food and stuff, I'm going to be at Troubadour Fest this weekend in Salina.
I'm sorry, what? What's
Troubadour
this?
Fest.
I don't know what that is.
Okay.
And I don't have any plans this weekend either.
For y'all that don't know, go ahead and jump online and check it out. But Troubadour Fest in Salina is put on by a good buddy of mine, Chase Colson. He is having, I don't even remember all the bands that are out there, but it's a music and barbecue festival with 48 of the top barbecue places in Texas and some outside of Texas that are all doing showcases. So it's a Pitmaster showcase for the most part with some music. Good music and not just like local guys, big Texas country folks.
Well, shit.
Yep, see y'all up there, I guess.
Yeah, you certainly will.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's on November 6th.
Yeah, that's this Saturday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
I've got my 1,000-gallon pit that I will be taking out there on Friday. They got us up in a hotel room over there. And I'll be smoking pork belly all night. So if y'all want to come.
How far away is that from here? I don't know that.
It's about It's about 45 minutes north of Dallas.
Okay, it's not too bad.
Not at all.
Yeah, we'll see if we can't get up there for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. But we're doing these things all the time. I just did one in Austin like 2 weeks ago called it was the Come and Smoke It Festival.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to go there. We were out of town, but yeah, that's a good one too. There's a lot of stuff popping up around again. I mean, look, the barbecue stuff has been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of organizations out there. There's like competitions all the time and stuff like that. But it is now for the first time over the last 5 or so years that it's been popularized is doing it at home.
Yeah.
And I think this is a big industry to be in.
It
So
is.
I'm excited to see where it goes. Also, mostly out of a combination of curiosity and I just want to eat the fucking food.
I'm ready to start cooking
what I
here,
mean?
man. I'm gonna bring one of my smokers here to the studio, and we're gonna.
Hey, we'll do it. We don't give a shit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So thanks for tuning in today, Brendan Lamb. Go find him on Instagram, watch his videos, and stay tuned for that cooking show, you sons of bitches. And we'll see you here in a bit for the baseball show.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, man.